Okay, g'day everybody, and welcome back to the next Q&A by Atlas. And it's a doozy. There's a lot of stuff in here. Apparently they've actually broken it up into two sections. We're going to get the other section later on, which is regarding PvP balancing. And so they've focused purely on a number of points that they wanted to bring up in this one around shipbuilding, and then they've answered a number of the more PvE orientated questions here today. Okay, the first section of the Q&A is actually dedicated to talking about the new modular system. They're basically saying, early access is giving them the unique chance to give us this split system where they can show off some of their stuff which isn't quite ready, which is essentially what early access is. And yeah, we've got this new modular system. They're talking about it having three main phases. First phase is to give us quick pre-built ships. We've got the ramming galley, we've got the majestic kraken. Done. Goal with that is just to give us a bit of a look. And then we move on to the next stage, which is actually having customizations, and you swap out modules. And so with the modules, it's similar to what they're talking about, having it similar to sail points. So at the moment, you've got 10 points that you could put on your ship. You could put heaps and heaps of small sails, or you could put a few large sails, because the large sails cost more sail points than the small ones. And then when you have module points, you can then outfit various different things on there for the cost. And so you could choose cheaper gun ports versus more expensive gun ports, and so on and so forth until you hit your actual cap. And so you still get that piece by piece. Right? And then the last part is basically having more of the cosmetic side of things. Right? So they want to be able to have people to choose your hull size, build your vessel from the ground up, and do it however you want, as long as you've got the right number of module points. And so it sounds like initially this next stage when we're going to get for the modular system is there'll be more points where you can actually swap modules in and out, but we won't have the freedom to customize an entire vessel. Whereas later on down the track, that final phase is where we can customize everything as we see fit. But that sounds like you're still going to have module points, right? So the customizations will mostly be around the cosmetic pieces that you put in. And I do wonder if those cosmetic pieces will be kind of like the deck pieces that we currently have, where you build up your ship with the deck pieces, but then the gun ports themselves are the module pieces. And so it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. And they do talk about how the fact that not getting rid of the old system's still going to fit in here somehow. And you've got the modular system and the original system, but the original system allowed for you to overbuild and build armored vessels and build structures on top of your vessels. And I saw someone who basically put something like 50 cannons above deck on these giant, huge, bloody cannon ranks, and it was just extraordinary. So are they going to do something to prevent that, to basically allow that the modular system is viable versus someone who does this extraordinary overbuild on the original system? So I still don't know where that one's going to play out. But nonetheless, there's a lot more detail about how the modular system will work, and the fact that they've introduced that concept of modular points. Very happy to see. So following on from that, we then have the Shipbuilding Survey. So here is the new survey about the new ship system. It goes hand in hand with a blurb that they've put up. For me, the blurb wasn't actually linked with the document, which is a little bit of a shame, but I expect that it's actually just the leading part of the Q&A, where it talks about what the modular system is. And there's fairly simple questions in there, basically, what do you like about the old system? What are the problems and advantages with the old system? What are your concerns and what do you enjoy about the new system? I don't feel that we've actually been offered enough information there for me to really be able to answer that, because all we've been given is new ships. We haven't been given any chance to play with the new modular system, despite the little blurb that they've thrown in there about that. And then, it goes on a bit more about the direction, concerns, how would you improve the ramming galley and the majestic kraken, and what would you like to see in terms of utility, functionality, cosmetics and visuals with the upcoming modular system. And I put in my own 2 cents there about a bunch of that sort of stuff. And they really stress here that they're not planning on getting rid of the original system. I don't know how that's going to fit in with the modular system, with one system looking like you can only build a certain amount, and the other system you can overbuild and create armoured ships. So I don't know how they're going to play together. There's something that has to be addressed there. It'll be interesting to see. And then lastly, to finish it off, basically, what would you like to see in the next survey, and what questions do you have? So yeah, nice simple survey. Definitely something that people can get their teeth into, because there's a lot of questions there where you can get very creative about what you want to see in the shipbuilding systems. So definitely go nuts. And my topic for the next survey, I want them to extrapolate on the Stormpunk theme and the vision that they keep talking about, and how the game is going to go. I want, even at a conceptual level, you know, do they have some storyboard pictures? What is Stormpunk going to look like? And yes, that's the survey. Make sure you get on it, put your submissions in, let them know what you want and what you want to see in the game. It's a fantastic opportunity for everyone to give them feedback on how you use the shipbuilding system currently within the game. Alright, let's get on to the Q&A. First question, will the new claims system address long-standing problems many islands have of lawless areas in what should be an island-owned territory? And their answer is essentially they've got a lot of info over the time that has been in early access. They can see good and bad aspects to how claim systems are working. They've got a new system coming up, which they're hoping to address that, but then they haven't really given us the answer to that question, other than they have some ideas, they're going to implement it, and we'll just have to suck it and see, I guess. Hopefully, it'll be good. Wait and see. Okay, the next question is one from my own community. With the new theme and vision, will single player still be a part of that? And here's an interesting answer, whether it's deliberate, the omission that they actually put in there, while PvP is our primary focus when designing content. That's a very, very important keywords at the start of that sentence. So they are primarily focused on PvP. Alright, so they want to... yeah. It rankles me a little bit, that particular statement, but I kind of get where they're coming from at this point in time, and I hope that PvP is their primary focus at the moment. Would have been a better answer there, and I don't know if that's the omission that is there or not. But yes, PvP can be their primary focus right now while they're fixing the game and getting it to where they want it to be, but then hopefully PvE and single player come back into focus. And they said that yes, the other game modes will be supported as the new features come along, including single player. So it's good. Single player is not going to disappear, which is good to know, but it's a little bit concerning about the wording around the fact that PvP is a primary focus. Hopefully it's just because that is where the focus needs to be at this point in time. Alright, so next question I believe is also one from my own. Are patches being tested in single player, or are they only tested for multiplayer purposes? And yes, their answer is, you know, they did actually throw a couple of single player fixes out recently, which was really, really good. And the key takeaway from this particular answer is it's bugs reported from the community, what allow them to know that there are bugs in single player, such that they can actually put fixes in place. So, takeaway from that is they don't seem to be particularly focused on putting bugs in, or bug fixes in for single player, but if we report them, they will address them. And that's about all we can bloody hope for at this point in time. Alright, next one, again, I think this is number 3 out of, I think, 7 questions I actually put up from my community. Can you enable the market system on single player? Well, this is actually very much my own question, actually. And yeah, the answer here is not what I wanted to hear, but it actually explained why they didn't do it with single player. I hadn't actually taken this particular part of it into account. Every server grid on the map actually has to have a server running it. In some cases you might have 2 grids that are actually run by a single server type scenario. And the main map, which is an 11 by 11, you would need, if you were trying to run that on a single server, you'd need an absolute mozza of a machine. And in the case of single player, when you load from one grid to another, obviously you're only running a single grid at a time. There might be some background code that's actually keeping some of your other stuff alive and calculating certain things for when you come back. But because you're only running a single server, there is no other server for you to communicate with. And so you could actually have them, like they haven't implemented it, but they could implement a market system in single player where your markets only function in the grid that you are running at any given time. But if you had a market in another grid somewhere that you wanted to be able to trade with, it wouldn't be possible because you're not running both grids at the same time. Hence they're saying there is some kind of engineering work that would actually be required to fix that. And obviously there's a lot more focus on bigger problems right now than, you know, changing how the server architecture actually works in the single player environment. I have actually run up the redistributable database that they've actually got on there. I thought that maybe I was able to fix my system by actually running that in the background, because when you're running your own private server, you have to have the actual trade database running in the background so that people can communicate to it from various different servers. But it didn't actually do anything for me. But it would have to involve that. But it would also mean that every server that you go to that is running, your computer would actually have to keep it alive in some manner and talking to a trade database. And so, yeah, I can understand that one a bit better now, even though I'm disappointed by it. I know where it's coming from. Okay, next one. Will there be factions or AI? It would make PvE more interesting. What about PvP only at sea, while land is PvE? While I like that idea, at the same time, I know some people won't like that idea. But what does Atlas think? Well, they've basically said that having factions and other things like that would better fit with an MMO RPG rather than a massive multiplayer sandbox game focused on PvP. And I get the feeling that they're saying that they're the latter, which is they're a sandbox game focused on PvP, so having factions is probably not going to be a thing. So it's going to focus more on the interactions of the people and whether that be conflict or cooperation. Yeah, I guess my take on that one is that I would actually have loved to have seen not so much factions, but we're talking about NPCs here, right? I want to see the settlements that you see within the game, the buildings. When you wander around them, you can hear the sounds of people laughing and carrying on, and sometimes you can hear some smithing inside those empty shells of castles and villages. I want to see NPCs in there. They don't have to be a faction, they don't have to be an involvement, but I would like to see those places populated such that the players actually could go in there and potentially interact with vendors. I think that would be great. And you don't have to involve any AI or factions as such. It's just essentially like the free ports. You've got villages that you can visit that might actually offer something. Maybe that that zone has the various resources that you're interested in, and rather than going and harvesting them off the land yourself, you can just go to the village and buy them for gold, because maybe you've got lots of it. Albeit the market system, who knows how that's going to play into that, and there's a lot of variables. But I still would love to see NPCs. But I get the feeling based on that that's not really going to be a thing. Okay, next one up. When will there be a massive structure limit for land bases to prevent people basically spamming on islands, you know, as defense on PvP, or basically to claim land to prevent people from building on it in PvE? They basically state that they don't like it. There's a lot of options out there. There's good and bad, and you have to balance performance with, you know, functionality. They said that they're looking at some of the modding community and how they've actually implemented some of the larger structures, so that obviously multiple pieces are then combined into a single piece, and that will help with performance. And they also talk about having automated structures specifically for defense, but that still doesn't answer the problem of having shit just built everywhere. You know, I think I said in the last Q&A, I jumped onto the PvE server just to actually have a look and see whether I really wanted to do it or not, and the islands were just littered with buildings, and there's virtually no opportunity for anybody to get in there and actually do anything nice. And people were really toxic. There was basically banner spam or sign spam of people swearing and carrying on about how someone had griefed them left, right and centre. And every island I encountered seemed to have something along those lines. And so it's not even just a massive structure limit. I suspect that they're, or, you know, on PvE itself, having people being able to build in multiple places to basically take up more space that other people can no longer use. How are they going to overcome that? And that hasn't really been addressed in that question. And I'd like to actually know the answer to that, but they probably don't have an answer to it as such yet either. Alright, next question is, when can we take specific amounts of resources from the resource box and keybinds to pull a single stack? Thanks for the suggestion, they'll look into it. Love hearing ideas. I feel like that one's been around for a long time. But okay, they've taken it on board. Let's hope that it's coming soon. Okay, what holidays are going to be recognised going forwards? Apparently they skipped over Valentine's Day this year. Is there going to be some kind of a formal list? The answer is no, they don't have a formal list, and they're focused primarily on obviously all the new balancing fixes, bugs, etc, etc. but they said they had a lot of fun actually doing the winter event this time around, and so they're probably going to look to do something more later. With a little bit of a teaser there, anyone wants some bunny ears. So I guess, yeah, we'll probably end up seeing over time more and more of these holiday events, which will be more than just, 2 times rates, 3 times rates. It's all good. Okay, this next question is a doozy. I like it. Alright. Basically, do they want to change the economics of the system? Apparently, in PvP, you've got lots of things to spend money on. In PvE, you don't have much to spend money on. Until someone's basically changed ownership because someone hasn't logged in for 10 days. And there's some interesting statements in here, right? So they've got some ideas for gold sinks, and they would definitely like to hear other people's ideas because they've only got a small team working on it at the moment. But to iterate back to one of the previous points where I wasn't sure if they'd left something out by omission, we are focused on balancing PvP first. So there is what was omitted from the sentence above. So there's actually every chance here that PvP is just the primary focus right now because it's the first thing that they're working on. In terms of gold functionality in PvE, they want to hear more info from other people on ideas of how gold can work in the PvE economy and how we could use it. So yeah, I guess there's an opportunity to chuck ideas up onto the Discord and put out some interesting ideas for the use of gold within the servers. And finally, there's a really big point here, and I'm wondering if it's actually going to be touched on further down below. We have started working on the next map, and it will give you more reasons to value different islands with unique characteristics. A new map. That sounds very, very interesting, and I want to know more. But of course, I doubt there's going to be more in this Q&A. Alright, next question. Will more gear for the players be added as time goes on? Like swords, guns and armor. The answer here is actually quite interesting, in that they say that they don't want it to be like the RPG approach, where the devs just create all the items and the players obviously then pick them up. They want the players to be able to craft them. And they say it in relationship to artwork, that all their artwork is actually focused on the ships and new visuals for player gear. So it sounds like you'll have the standard tools maybe that we have right now, but you will be able to customize the look and the feel of your gear as well as your ships. Now, I like the sound of that too. Given that I live in the PvE world, creativity and customizations are everything, right? So having visuals on the gear too, I really, really like the sound of that. That sounds good. So the next one, does the team envision that it will be viable to spend 24/7 on the water and avoid land altogether? And the answer here is a little bit mixed, really. They definitely want more people on the sea. They're looking at the physical trade routes and the fact that you can actually steal resources from those trade ships. So you basically do pirating. And they say that having a strong navy will almost be required if you have a base on land. So that basically says that naval attacks on land potentially is a thing. I wonder if that will mean... No, they've said there's not really going to be NPCs and factions. I'm not sure how that statement really goes into it. What does having a strong navy for your land base really, really mean there? Other than defending yourself against other players, does that suggest that there's going to be NPC pirate attacks on land bases? That statement's a little bit of an odd one. And then, yeah, and they want land to stay as a thing, because obviously there are players out there that do enjoy land-based gameplay. But yeah, interesting thing there. It's like they're not going to have factions, but you will need a strong navy if you have a land base. Interesting statement. Oh, so many of these questions are full of interesting stuff. They want to hear more about the direction of loot. The loot is so bad, yada yada yada. Basically, blueprints lately with the number of crafts and percentages have just been going berserk apparently. But the answer here is that yes, they have been doing some transformative work and they've got some of it wrong in terms of their math. But the plan apparently going forward is to have the blueprints drop with higher frequency but with lower craft counts, so you end up having a variety of different styles of blueprints, but you can't use them for very much. You can't take one blueprint and live on it for a heap of time. And the other part that gets very, very interesting in here is they talk about a new system of taking blueprints, crafting, merging and upgrading systems. So does that mean that you will be able to take blueprints and merge them together to get a new blueprint. That sounds very interesting. It's hard to say. Let's read that wording again. Regarding our long-term plans, rather than making a strict RNG loot experience, so that's your drops, we're working on a set of blueprint crafting, merging, and upgrading systems. So we will be able to create the blueprints, we will be able to merge blueprints, and we will be able to upgrade our blueprints. I like the sound of this. It's a whole new element to the game. Something tangible that could quite possibly be something very fun to work with. And it looks like it will be on the sails first, and so that will be the prototype system that we get to actually see. And they talk about it being in the coming months, so it's probably quite a way off, but it sounds like a very, very fun prototype system that they're going to work with the sails, and I am very much looking forward to seeing that one. Okay, next one's also another eye-opening one. Will there be more reason to sail in the home grids? Currently, it says GA here. I assume that means Golden Age. For the Golden Age runes, the only real reason to leave the home grids is their talk of making more local incentivized playing. And yes, that is what they want. They reference their sea forts as something of that, an example where you might want to actually go and take the sea fort. And so it's an objective that you need to go to take control of and compete over. And they want to have more stuff there. They've got the trade wind system that's coming in, which will allow us to travel the map faster. And then there's this new portal system that they're actually going to introduce. And I actually wonder if that's why they need a new map. Because to throw in a new system like a portal system to the existing map potentially is kind of a game-breaking deal until they've actually managed to test it properly on a smaller environment. I will be interested to see how that one actually works out, but yes. There's a lot of interesting stuff in there, right? So they're talking about having more objectives. They're talking about having things that you can compete over. And then they say that, like, they're not meant to be single-player experiences, but rather a way of bringing people together in conflict. So there are going to be things that you will want to fight over, things that will actually probably net you resources, I assume. There's a lot packed in to a lot of these statements that are in their responses, and it's there's a lot. There's a hell of a lot. Alright, on to the next one. What are the long-term performance strategies? And, you know, how can they basically take hundreds of thousands of structures being thrown onto islands, and how can players basically provide feedback to give them potential strategies for dealing with this? Their answer is based on one of the previous ones. They're looking to consolidate lots of smaller pieces into larger singular pieces. I like that because, you know, you can build a single piece rather than building multiple ones, but there are other considerations in there that they probably haven't. Oh, you would assume that they're thinking about them, but if I can choose to build, so let's say we'll take an example of maybe a 5x5, and I want to build a house. I want to put a floor down 5x5, and so you can give me one piece which measures 5x5, or you can build it out and have to lay 25 pieces. So you've saved 25 to 1. That's all well and good, but you're not preventing anyone from still building 25 pieces. And so if someone still goes to the trouble of building those 25 pieces, you haven't gained on your performance. You've just added new things in. So it's relying on the fact that people will choose to move towards those newer pieces. And other than having to build less pieces, which is no impost because you can just now fire and forget in your smithy, you just choose however many you want and just let them build, right? What is the incentive to build those larger pieces? Are they going to be slightly cheaper? I don't know. But it'll be interesting. But the other part to this, which is an interesting statement, is the fact that they don't want to remove the customizations that is the hallmark of Atlas. And so while a lot of the people in my own community have been particularly worried about them taking away functionality and the customizations and the fun that drew everyone in the first place to Atlas, here is a statement where they're saying that they don't want to lose that, but I'm still not sure how it's going to fit together, because there's a few things like these larger pieces. Where are the incentive to use them other than you're building less? And then things like the modular system and the original shipbuilding system. Where's the incentive to use the modular system when the original system gives you so much more customization? So yeah, some interesting responses from the devs. But obviously, in terms of how it plays out, we really need to see some of it before we really understand how it's going to work. And I hope, at least with this particular one, maybe the larger multi-pieces can have a cheaper resource cost than what the individual pieces are, so it actually makes sense to go for the larger piece rather than the individual ones. And then, how is it going to work with terrain? Let's say that I'm on an uneven surface. I would use singular pieces to build up to where I want it to be, whereas a large piece might stick out ridiculously and actually break some kind of a build limit, and I'm not able to place it until I first build those smaller pieces underneath again. So is there something around performance there that maybe they have or have not considered? And we probably won't know that until it actually gets a bit more of it out there. Okay, are there any plans to rework the chat system to give a better communication method, like my ability to talk? Not for a while, but they want to implement a mail system which will be cross-server. Fair enough. Not really much more to say than that, really, is there? It sounds like they know that the chat system is not good, but we could have a mail system that turns up sometime in the future. Okay. Would the ability to salvage parts of a sunken enemy ship be possible? A skill on chance to salvage an item at a low percentage. This would help provide incentive for PvP loot. And the answer there is that yes, they would like to see more on the conflict in the ocean. After winning a difficult battle, basically having something to give you greater reward for your efforts would definitely be a thing. And I can understand that sentiment. Risk versus reward, really. I mean, if you spend a lot getting your ships up, and I mean the gold cost now on top of resource costs for building ships, especially with some of these specialized ships with the tentacles and the horns that are required to actually get them up and running, you're not going to want to lose them. And so where is that incentive? Like, if you defeat an enemy, what is it you're going to get that's going to make that risk worthwhile? So yeah, good question, and hopefully we see a fair bit off the back of that one, as much as I probably won't benefit off it, but that's a very good question. Will players who've been playing since early access be rewarded with something special when the game goes full release? They say that they would like to reward long-term fans, but it's too early to commit. I don't particularly care. I think it would just be great. It'd be kind of that icing on the cake for those people who've been around for that long, and I can't even say that I've been around since the start of it, but yeah, if they were to reward the long-term committed early access people, that's great, but there are a lot of them. There wouldn't be anything particularly good. Maybe it could be some unique skins and things like that, but yeah, I'm happy enough to just be a part of the development and actually see my own input actually being not just recognized, but taken into consideration. And I'm already starting to see some of that. The community that I have over on my Discord is starting to grow. I've started developing a little bit of a YouTube relationship with some other people who have similar interests in Whisperbird and in Washman Gaming. And we've been sort of back and forwarding, and a few of the other people that are frequent commenters. You know, there's a lot of good discussions going about some of the features that come and go, and I'm really enjoying it. And I guess it's a good plug. If you want to join, check out the description on the video, and I'll have the link to my Discord. Feel free to join. But yeah, early access rewards. It'll be interesting to see if something does come along, but I don't feel it's 100% necessary. I think I remember seeing this one pop up on the Discord too, and I was putting my own questions out. What are some of the immersion goals on the horizon? While performance related, it's boring and problematic to have ships render in when they're almost in firing distance, versus spotting sails way off in the far distance. And they say that it's on their radar, and they agree that it's the render distance is a bit of a problematic thing, but they are, they're working on changes, and there's a lot of things that they probably have to work out there. They have to resolve a lot of the building problems as well as the ship problems, as while I play a lot of single player and some on private servers, the number of buildings, the number of vessels are far less than what you would actually see on a full server like the official PvEs or PvP servers, where a lot more players would basically cause a lot more lag and a lot more performance related issues with all of the buildings and structures and vessels. So yeah, hopefully they can resolve that one, because if they want this to be massive multiplayer sandbox PvP, as they said in the previous one, performance is going to be a huge thing. And way back when Atlas was introduced, they were touting this thing that I can't even remember the number. I feel like it was around the 40,000 mark, but they wanted to have tens of thousands of people being able to be playing the game at the same time. And very ambitious with the way that the game is designed at its base level under the bonnet. So hopefully they can work that one out. Now this one is another one which has an answer that's packed full of potential. Like, it's crazy. So weather mechanics right now are very one-dimensional and don't offer any strategic value. Like, you won't go sailing into a storm to lose chasers. I actually don't really like the water spouts. I actually think they're a stupid thing. But, you know, it's something that the game's had forever. But their answer, they're planning on fleshing out more on the weather systems in the future, including the players being able to control weather on certain islands. That is a very, very interesting statement. And they all then say, you know, we'd also like to make storms more interesting by adding encounters and resources inside them. Is this a little hint towards the stormpunk theme? The fact that you could actually control weather on an island to make it inhabitable, or if you could control weather to make it uninhabitable as an attacker, right? That leads to skills or other things that might be leading towards that stormpunk theme, where weather and storms are a part of whatever that vision is. And so that's packed with stuff that's we're just giving a little sliver of the information, but it's just hinting rather than giving full info. But the long and the short of that is that, yeah, they've got all kinds of weather system stuff coming up that we just don't know about. Last one, apparently. Also, small things like allowing lanterns to burn indefinitely and automatically turning off and on at dusk and dawn. Now I can remember some of the mods in Ark actually doing that. And the answer, they love hearing quality of life suggestions, keep them coming. And yes, I agree with that. It would be the same for me. Whether or not you want to actually join me on my Discord and community and talk all things Atlas, that's all well and good, but if you have ideas at the spur of the moment while you're reading through and listening to this all the way through to the end, chuck them down in the chat. You know, I am a part of the Atlas Discord. I'm happy to collate questions to throw them up on these Q&As if I can actually manage to catch them when they happen. This time around, Conch, the new Discord mod, actually put out a good warning about when the Q&A was actually going to come up this time, so I was able to be forewarned and actually got everybody to put together any questions they might have had. We got 7 questions. We threw them up on the Discord at the time, and they've answered basically 3 of them. It's nice that they managed to do that. I would have preferred some of the extra ones in there. I guess the other one that I would have liked to have heard them actually say, you know, that was a good question, or not a good question rather, but, you know, it was a good suggestion, is I suggested they have an in-game menu option for people to provide feedback and suggestions. I remember when I played World of Warcraft, there was basically that thing. You could just click a button into the options menu and you could leave your feedback. It was just a little form where you could free type in. Sure, they might get a whole bunch of absolute crap, but they already get that on the Discord. I mean, I've seen some of the toxic behaviour of people on there, so having an in-game method of actually providing that feedback would mean that as you're playing and you have that, you know, moment of like, oh, that's a really good idea, you just flick open the button, type it down, boom, suggestion is sent off, and then they have that in written form, and then they can just read through them whenever they actually feel like it, looking for inspiration for new ideas. But yeah, at least for my own sake, feel free to join my Discord and put your own 2 cents in there. Feel free to join the Atlas Discord and put your 2 cents in there. Otherwise, chuck a comment down on the video. Suggestions are good, commentary is good, and I always love to talk things out. Whew. Well, that brings us to the end of the Q&A. This one was an absolute cracker of a bloody Q&A. And from what they were saying, this is only part of the Q&A. They've actually stripped out all of the PvP questions that were actually put into this particular Q&A, and they're going to basically do another one by the sounds of it. They're going to have a second notice full of all the PvP responses, which means that engagement on this Q&A is far greater than the previous one and the one before that. I'd say that, just the sheer volume of stuff that's going on here, and the fact that there's actually questions that they didn't answer that I felt were probably legitimate questions that could have been answered, means that they probably got a hell of a lot of things that they could actually give to the devs to actually get some responses. And kudos for them to do it. I mean, they've given us an enormous amount of information here, and heaps of it's kind of just fleshing out stuff that we like. Fleshing out's the wrong word. There's just tidbits and slivers of information where they're giving hints to things that they may or may not actually be ready to release. And so, we've got new maps, we've got new systems in terms of like the blueprints. The fact that they're currently focused on PvP, and it may not necessarily be the only thing they're focused on in the future, but it gives us, why has single player and PvE been lagging behind right now? Because they've just got a single dedicated focus on PvP and balancing the crap out of that. And then this new modular system, they're finally given us just that little crumb of information, how there's module points and things like that. And so it's definitely good that the community is definitely coming together a lot more to throw more questions out there, and we're getting some answers, albeit that some of the answers are a little weak. There's still some information in there, and it's very, very good to see. And I guess, being on the final note, if you've made it this far, thank you very much for listening in to my Q&A commentary. If you did enjoy this, make sure you go ahead and like the video, subscribe and all that usual stuff, and I'll have a link down to my Discord in the description. Alright, thanks for listening in, and I'll catch you in the next one.